go. You guys know what I'm going to play just about as much as I know what I'm going to play when we start these things. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Playground Sessions YouTube channel. I am Phil. We're talking about more blues today. And that's because we voted, well, I should say you guys voted, on the topic for the live lesson in our new format on user voice. I'm going to get to that in a little bit more in just a second here. But I'm really excited to be revisiting this topic. It makes me know that you guys were excited when we kind of kicked it off in our last lesson on the blues, which I think was 2 weeks ago at this point. So we have some fun things in store today. We're going to continue down the path that we started in that lesson, talking about Boogie Woogie, which I already see some people writing about in the chat. I see you, Jennifer. I'll answer your question in just a bit. And then we're also going to talk about something new that we didn't talk about in our last blues lesson, and that's going to be the 12-bar blues form. A very, very important thing to know if you want to get versed in the blues. It's something that jazz musicians, even though they tend to add extra stuff to it, it's still based in that 12-bar blues form. That form also has influenced a lot of rock music and has been around for a long time. So I'm excited to be teaching you guys about that. I mentioned user voice. I'm actually going to try and share the screen here, or I'm going to ask Aiden to. Here's a live viewing of what we see in user voice. It's a little small for me to see where I'm at, but I wanted to check in and see where are we currently at. Live results right now. Aiden, maybe you can tell us what is the top most voted on topic at the moment?
It's jazz.
Jazz, oh.
Steps from selecting, learning to performing a new song.
And steps from learning to performing a new song. Okay, hey, you know that I'm always down to teach whatever you guys vote on. I would love to teach jazz. I would also love to teach this topic of kind of walking you through a process of picking a song, how to start learning it, how to learn the whole thing, how to perfect it, maybe how to memorize it, and then how to pick the next song, all that stuff. That's kind of a lot, but you know, it's also an important topic to cover. My main point here is to say go over to user voice by clicking on the link in the chat. I'm going to ask Andrew here to post that so you guys can click on that. You'll have to sign up for an account. It's a free account. All you need is your email, and then once you're in, you can vote not only on these YouTube live topics from week to week, but also on songs that you'd like to see in the app with interactivity, as well as feature requests for future builds of the app. So check out user voice. Now what I'd like to do is say hey to you guys. Let's go to a little bit of a Q&A here. I'm going to check in on the chat and see if we have some blues related stuff from you guys to help steer where I take this lesson today. Charles Smith says Phil needs a cool hat to really play the blues and maybe some dark shades. Absolutely, Charles. You can't see me right now, but I'm in a full Blues Brothers getup right now. No, I'm not. But you're absolutely right. We were joking around about something like that ahead of the lesson today. My throat has been kind of sore the last couple days, and I said, oh man, I hope my voice doesn't sound too rough. And Aiden said, hey man, it's the blues. So fair enough, here we are. Hey Charles Smith, hey Team Dixon, Elta John. You loved the intro, thank you. I was trying to just play around with some bluesy improv there in time. I'm glad you dug it. Hold my beer, what's up? What's up everyone? Kevin Chrisman, hey. Nice to see you. John Anderson, Robert Atkins. I love books to read. What's up? Hey, Lily Mae. Uncle Rabbit, what's going on? Franklin E. Gonzalez Dwint, how's it going? Jennifer, representing from Cleveland. Nice to see you again. Jeanette. So, it looks like people are starting to get their shots. That's exciting, you guys. To those who have been able to get your shots so far, how's your experience been? For those who haven't, what's your experience been like? Waiting or whatever your experience has been. Let's keep it civil, of course, and let's just remember that we're all dealing with this thing, and we see some light at the end of this tunnel here with the vaccines rolling out. So that's really exciting. My parents and my wife's parents have gotten their shots and are feeling good. So I'm glad to hear for those who are writing that you've got yours as well. This is really great news. All right, guys, well, we're talking about the blues today. Oh, I see some of the, hey, Ben Rapp, This is a blues riff in B, so watch me for the changes and try to keep up. I don't know if I can play a blues in B, but I would always just say, hey, you know what? Let's go up a half step and we're in the key of C. That's all right with me. But that's a good point. You know, we talk about transposing sometimes, and which is the ability to take something in one key and move it around into a different key. It's a really great tool for accompanists who play underneath singers, because oftentimes singers will have to change keys slightly or drastically, and you've got to be able to transpose and keep up. So for those of you who maybe are watching this lesson today, where we'll cover some blues, 12-bar blues form, and some boogie woogie patterns, if it feels a little too easy for you, and I have it in the key of C, I would challenge you to take Ben Rapp's suggestion and try transposing it down a half step. See if it's as easy for you there. That could be a nice way for you to get a little extra out of the challenge. All right, we're talking about SM58s. Is that right, Robert Atkins? Yeah, that's a great mic for sure. For sure, I use some of those sometimes. I'm using a lapel mic right now to try and reduce some of the additional noise we might have in the room, but SM58s are great vocal mics for sure. All right, Uncle Rabbit. How do you put a capo on a piano? That would be a solution for sure, if only. All right, so I'm going to get to 2 questions here, and then we're going to get into our lesson. Charles asks, have I ever heard of the Kansas City Blues? Oh, good. Playground already answered. Andrew answered you. I personally am not a blues expert as far as the origins and the different kind of Delta blues versus the Memphis blues.
Count Basie's from Kansas City.
Okay.
So
so it's going to be a Count Basie style blues. Andrew told me Count Basie's from Kansas City, so that old school Count Basie blues is likely coming out of that. That's pretty cool. Jennifer from Cleveland. Hey, Jennifer. Jennifer says the boogie woogie that I taught last week, I assume, when you did it, it sounded totally wrong, is what you're saying. Oh man, we're going to fix that today, because I had, basically, I was just kind of showing you with my hand, right? And I wasn't, we weren't looking at notation, we weren't grounded in anything like that. Well, today I do have some notation for the boogie woogie, and so maybe we can start there. I'd like to start with just a 2-measure phrase right now to kind of walk through the pattern that I taught. So here it is. And this is just outlining a C7 harmony. We're going to talk about how to take this pattern and put it to other chords as well when we get into the 12-bar form. But for now, let's just focus on the C7. So, of course, we are going to start on C, we're going to end on C. And for now, we just kind of have a really basic quarter note walk up and down just to show the pattern. And that pattern is this. Of course, you can repeat that as well. That's it. So first of all, a C7 chord looks like this in root position. C, E, G, and B flat. And so you need to, first of all, keep that shape in mind as you're walking up and down with these single notes. And of course, that's because if you see this shape, you can anchor everything back to that shape instead of thinking about this all as individual notes that you have to memorize. What comes after C? E. Oh, what comes after E? G. If you think about the actual chord shape the whole time, it should be easier to remember. Now, if we only outlined the notes in that chord, it would look like this. And I guess if we were doing like a 6/8 shuffle kind of blues thing, maybe we could do that. But for now, I want to keep us in 4/4. And to do that, if we want the pattern to repeat each time the harmony changes, then we need to have a passing tone in there. And so what I love to do, and this is very standard in this style, is to use the 6th scale degree to get up to the 7th. So we have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and then we're going to walk up from the 5th to the flat 7th by using the 6th. Now on the way back down, same idea. So everybody, get your hand up here if you're watching in front of your keyboard or piano. And by the way, I saw on Facebook, in our Facebook community the other day, somebody said that whenever I say get your hands up, you don't actually do it. That made me laugh. But also, It's really actually an important thing here, guys. So if you hear me say get your hand up, don't be shy. Get that hand up. And even if you're sitting at a table, you could still practice on a tabletop. Why not, right? So get those hands up, and we're going to try this together. As far as how to play this with certain fingers, there's a couple ways you could do it. I don't recommend trying to find one position where you can do everything, because that's going to have you stretch in an awkward way. And so what I typically like to do is 5, 3, 2, 1. And you could also do 5, 4, 2, 1, depending on how that feels for you. And then keeping your thumb on that A, bring your 2 finger over to B flat. But don't get your thumb out like that. Keep it where it is over A, because you're going to rock up to B flat and rock right back down to A. And then, so you could really do this first to get used to the pattern. And then when you're feeling good there, practice that. And I say that I'm rocking back and forth here because I'm not doing all fingers here like this. I'm actually letting my hand and wrist kind of do that motion for me. And so again, that looks like this. 2 over, rock back down to thumb, and then get your hand back into that same shape. So of course, once we get into some syncopated rhythms, we can start to swing that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In the left hand here, that's the basic pattern if we were doing this quarter note feel. And so later on, I'm going to teach you about the other chords that we might find, that we would find in a C 12-bar blues. This is the 1 chord, C7. We then later have F7 and G7. And I'm going to show you how to apply this pattern to those as well. And then in G. Okay, we'll get there. But this is the basic foundation for that boogie woogie pattern. So Jennifer, I hope that that helps. I hope that that answers any questions and clears any confusion up from last week. That's what we're working with right there, C7, and we're bridging the 5th to the flat 7 by using the natural 6th. And if you notice, one way to kind of help make the swing feel happen without actual swung 8th notes is to put a stronger emphasis on beats 2 and 4. I'm going to exaggerate it here for you so you can hear it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Now, briefly, what I'm doing in my right hand, for those who are curious, I'm just playing a certain voicing or an inversion of a C7 chord. Just then, I think I was doing this, or maybe this. But there's all these different inversions, and I'm still outlining that chord just like I'm doing in my left hand. But instead of doing a walking pattern, I'm playing block chords, and I'm trying to accent the swung rhythms. And in fact, if I was going to play all of the upbeats, it would swing pretty hard. It would sound maybe a bit more old-fashioned, but it would get something like this. See that? Now, what I was doing was not playing every upbeat before. I was just accenting a few, something like this. That helps really establish the swing. It doesn't have to be fancy up here. In fact, in some ways, you might want to keep it simpler. You could even do something like this, just the 1-5-1. And of course, the swing there is all based on that triplet feel. If you decide to accent all of those triplets, it still swings, but it takes on a different shape as well. But this is all just variations on that kind of boogie woogie pattern. So Jennifer and everyone else, I really hope that helps. Lily Mae says you want to learn boogie woogie piano dual to do with your sister. That would be so cool. And in fact, you know, depending on what difficulty level she is currently at, assuming maybe you're a little more advanced because you said she's your little sister, maybe you could work on teaching her the boogie woogie pattern, and then you could work on applying the blues scale on top and try and do some improvisation. You could also try experimenting with some of those block chord rhythms like I was doing as well. You're welcome, Jennifer. I hope that helps. Uncle Rabbit, playing with you on a U bass. That's awesome. Oh yeah, you know, actually that actually brings up a good point. I wonder if you guys would be interested in kind of doing like something where I play something for an extended amount of time and let you jam along. That might be fun. It wouldn't be as fun for me because I can't hear you on the other end, but that's okay. If I'm playing something steadily and you want to work along with me, that could be fun. Let me know in the chat if that's something you guys would like. Better yet, let us know in user voice where we're trying to steer all of your requests. Yeah, or even playing along with a backing track, Andrew says. That could be cool. In fact,
you're the backing track.
What's that?
Or you're the backing
Oh
track.
yeah, I can be your backing track. That's right. You know, but that also brings up another good point, is that sometimes I like to jam along with the app, the backing tracks in a particular song. So if you pull up a blues song, I know we've got a few in the app. One that comes to mind is Green Onions. It's kind of fun to just play along with the backing track, and you can do chord rhythms or improvise with blues scale, whatever you like. Yeah, Jennifer, fair question. She's saying old-fashioned. I was just listening to Bessie Smith. It doesn't necessarily mean that anytime you hear that style, it's old-fashioned. And in fact, there's obviously stuff is cyclical, right? So one of my favorite artists is from the last few years at least. Now, of course, I'm blanking on his name. Leon Bridges. He is a popular artist who really was kind of taking that older style and paying homage to it, and you heard a lot of influences from older styles in his new music. So definitely not meant to be a negative connotation to say that something's old-fashioned. After all, I'm a musician, a jazz fan, and that's an old style that I have a lot of respect for. All right, so Oliver Wright is saying the bass line should, okay, yo bro, should the bass line not be written 8 to the bar in a 12-bar blues? You're absolutely right. So Oliver, first off, let me remind you guys, what we see on screen here is just to kind of teach that pattern in a way that seems a bit more digestible. So what I'd like to do now, thank you for the segue, Oliver, let's get into the 12-bar blues. And I've basically just taken that same pattern and written it out across 12 bars. And here we're using eighth notes as well. And again, we could do something with quarter notes or 16th notes, and depending on how we're feeling it all out, it still could be valid, right? So when we say 12-bar blues, yes, we're trying to keep it into 12 measures, but if we wrote something out in cut time, or if we wrote something out in 24 measures long, where the harmonies were doubled up, yes, it would still be a 12-bar blues form. We would just have it kind of spread across in a different way for the notation's sake. But here is an example here where we might see that same pattern applied across the chord. So before we talk about the pattern, I just want to call your attention to the chord symbols. And the chord symbols are underneath the measure that they are referring to. So first measure we have C7. Next we have F7. That's the 4 chord in the C blues. And Jennifer, I'll answer your question about the note letters once I break down this pattern here a bit more. But we're talking higher level now, 12-bar blues. Here's the form. First measure is the 1 chord. Next measure, the 4 chord. And then we're back to the 1 chord for 2 measures. Next, F7 for 2 bars. Then we're C7 for 2 bars. So far we've just used the 1 and the 4 chord. But here, on the 9th measure of a 12-bar blues, we're now at the 5 chord. So the final 4 bars go 5, 4, 1. And then sometimes people might put a 5 at the end as well to kind of use it as a turnaround to repeat back to the beginning. So I'm going to play through this now as it's written. Now to the 4 chord. Again. Back to 1. Now 5. And 4. Back to 1. Okay? Now, to Oliver's point, you know, should it be eighth notes? Should it be quarter notes? Another way that we can do this would be to have it be quarter notes, but we wouldn't be able to complete the pattern. So it would look something more like this. A 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another way to do it too, but we wanted to write it this way so that we could keep the pattern intact for each measure of harmony, okay? There's a ton of variations on this stuff, you guys, so let's not get too literal and locked into one way. Excuse me. Elton John says the 4-note chords are a little difficult. You play them best to get all voices in. Well, once again, guys, hand position and fingering suggestions are just that. Everyone has a different hand size and shape. However, I would just encourage you all to remember, if a certain position seems like it works for you, but you notice that you're really tense or you're really struggling to reach something, there's likely a better way. So I just want to throw that out there. Oh, Andrew's getting a shout out here from Elton John. Nice job on Fields of Gold advanced version. Love it.
I requested that.
There you go. Andrew requested it in user voice. It's a true democracy, you guys. Everybody gets a vote, even us. All right. So I guess let's talk through the pattern here. So Jennifer, to answer your question, on C, the notes, on the C7 harmony, the pattern goes through these notes. C, E, G, A, and B flat. And then you walk right back down, retracing your steps. One more time. C, E, G, A, and B flat. So now let's go to the F7 chord. For those who don't know, F7 looks like this. And remember, we want to get these shapes visualized so that we can anchor into them when we're doing the single note pattern. So the F7 chord is F, A, C, and E flat. Sure enough, those are the notes we're going to use, but remember, we need to use the 6th of that chord to bridge to the 7th. And I'll remind you what that means here. The root, the 3rd, the 5th, and then we have to play the 6th, which in F7 is D, and then we'll reach up to the flat 7, which in F7 is E flat, and then walk back down. Now notice, because in the 12-bar form that we see above, when we go from the first measure to the second measure, we actually have to cut off the final note. Right? We can't go all the way back down to C. Well, it's written that way. We're not cutting anything off that's written. But when we look at the pattern on each chord individually, we tend to go like this, right? Back to C. Back to C. It's important to remember when we get into the blues form here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have to go right to the next one. Same thing here. Don't play F again. We're back to C. All right, 5th bar here, we're back to F7. And we have 2 F7s in a row here, so we will play F here again. Now back to C. We've got 2 bars here of C. Now here comes G7. We're on measure 9 of our 12-bar blues. This one's different for a few reasons. Well, the main reason is that the shape looks different in this key. All right, we're not playing 4 white notes and then reaching up with our 2 finger to a black note. Instead, all of the notes in this chord are white keys. We're in the key of C after all, which means this is the only true dominant 7th chord in this key if we compare to a major scale. Now, don't let that confuse you or worry you if you're confused by that. That's not really the point of today's lesson. I want to get you guys playing this Boogie Woogie, so I won't get too theory heavy. But I would like to walk you through this now. So G7 looks like this. G, B, D, and F, natural. So let's keep that shape in mind. We're going to go G, B, D, E, F, back down. Yeah, so I'm seeing some questions in the chat about what I mentioned there, so I'll speak to that a little bit more. So, Elta, it does seem confusing because the G7 chord looks like it doesn't have a flat, but I want us to clarify something here. Flat doesn't mean black key. Sharp doesn't mean black key. Often, when we do see flats and sharps, we might end up playing a black key as a result, but it's not a rule that every time you see a flat or a sharp, it's going to equal a black key. And here's why. First of all, can anyone play me an F flat? I'll wait. What about a B sharp? So the definition of a flat and a sharp, again, it doesn't say black key. What it says is to either raise or lower a note by a half step. So if we have a note, let's call it G, and we see a G sharp, what it really means is raise that G a half step. And that happens to end up on a black key. But if we see a B, and then we see a B sharp, that doesn't mean this, that's actually a C sharp. A B sharp is this. Now I know that can be confusing because, hey wait, isn't that a C? Well, depends on the context. And that's kind of what the point is here. Yeah, you guys are with me here in the chat. Yeah, an F flat is an E, a B sharp is a C, but we have to keep in mind the key signature and the context. And so when we're looking at a C blues, what we need to remember is that we're in the key of C. And what that means is we are using the major scale degrees to outline everything. So we look up here and we see a key signature of no sharps, no flats. That means key of C. That's also why we see a flat symbol on our B when we're playing the C7 chord. Because that's an alteration that we're making to the key that we're in. Typically we would just see a B natural if we were going to stay in the key of C the whole time, right? So that's why we see a flat symbol there, because hey wait, yes, it's out of the key, but that's an important note for a C dominant 7th chord. And remember, the blues are all about dominant 7th chords. Same thing with F7 here. If we were strictly sticking to the key signature of the key of C, it would look like this. But we see a flat symbol in front of that E because that's what makes it a dominant 7th chord. An F7 dominant chord is that E flat. Now the thing about G7, we don't actually see a flat there, we just see a normal F, right? That's because when we play that F, that gives us the G dominant 7th chord. We don't have to make an alteration to this note to make it the correct chord quality. And you guys, that is full circle here. That is why G7, that's the only true dominant 7th chord in this key. We don't have to make any alterations, and on its own, it is a dominant 7th chord. You know why? Because it's the 5 chord. Let me reiterate that. Because it's the 5 chord. That was weird. I don't know if you guys saw a little hiccup with my keyboard there, but I think we're all back. G7 is the 5 chord in the key of C, and the 5 chord by definition in a major key is going to be dominant. So Elta, that's a very long way of saying the G7 chord, the F is actually the flat 7 of that chord already. It's a major triad. And that major triad's natural 7 would be here, but with an F, that's already the flatted 7. So really the short answer would be, Elta, think about it like this. We're flatting an F sharp. So technically it's just an F. F sharp is the normal 7 for a G chord, and here that would be the flat 7. Okay, so I'd like us to go back to our notation here, and I want to talk about some things that you might be able to do to evolve this. Okay, some of you, this might be the right difficulty level as it is, in which case I would say practice this and don't try and add more. But I want to talk about two different ways that we can add a little bit more complexity to this if you'd like to. And we'll keep looking at this notation here. But the first thing that I want to suggest is kind of what I hinted at in the beginning, which is right-hand chords, okay? And so the basic way to do that, I would say, would be to copy the shape that you're doing in your left hand. And remember, we're outlining this shape, C, E, G, and B flat. So let's copy that in the right hand, and let's give it an extra octave of breathing room. So everyone, and that means you, and you, and you, get your hands up, and let's just play two block chords here. Here's the left hand, here's the right hand. Now the trick here is going to be to play a whole note chord on top of whatever harmony you're outlining with that boogie woogie pattern. So here's measure 1 if I was going to add that chord on top. Now measure 2, going to F7, I would then do this. Back to C. Okay, same idea for the G7 once we finally get there. And of course, we can make some changes to this as well if you want to drop that left hand down an octave to make it sound more like a bass. That's okay too. Now if you still want to go from there, I would suggest adding some rhythms in the right. Okay. So the other thing that I might suggest is just in the left hand alone. And I also hinted at this in our last blues lesson. What if we want to have the swinging rhythms present in the left hand too? Well, what I like to do is straight up add an octave above every note that I play. So we can keep the notation here, but let's imagine that every one of these notes is then accompanied by an octave higher. And so I guess we would call them 16th notes based on what we're looking at here. But so for those who aren't sure what I'm doing, I'm still following that exact same pattern, but I'm just echoing each note with its same note an octave higher. So C, E, G, A, B flat, A, G, E. And then feel free to try it with even rhythms at first, if that helps you. But I like to try and really swing those, which means you're going to kind of smack your thumb a little bit later, and then you're going to land on the next note a little sooner. Now go to F, same idea. I keep wanting to go to tenths. That's another lesson though. So the octaves is cool. Robert Atkins says the octaves always get you. Yeah, I mean, to me, they pique my interest and they add a challenge, and so I agree. I'm seeing some comments go back and forth about the E natural, so let me quickly explain there. You're absolutely right, Oliver. Was it Oliver? Excuse me, My Music. My Music, thanks for writing. You're absolutely right that...
Oops, I just answered.
Oh, Andrew just answered. That's okay. I'll go ahead and answer anyways. You're saying My Music that there's no key signature that's showing that E should be flat anywhere in the song, so why would it be marked natural? Well, first of all, you're right about the key signature. It doesn't say anything about E flats. But there is actually a spot in the song where there is an E flat, and that's going to be in measure 2. That's going to be the top of the F7 chord. So there's an E flat there. Now, you're right, because the key signature says no flats, then we know that the E flat that's in measure 2 is put back to normal once we get to the next measure. And so, yes, there shouldn't have to be a symbol there that shows that E's are natural. However, as Andrew pointed out, a courtesy accidental is what that's called. It's sort of a courtesy to the performer or to the reader to remind you that the E flat you just played is no longer flat. So that's exactly right. So that's called a courtesy accidental, to remind you that things have gone back to normal. And in this case, you're right. Back to normal means E naturals. Okay, cool. So guys, the last thing I'll say about evolving this thing is to combine those things. Remember, the first idea was to have chords. And then the next idea was to add a little rhythm to those chords. And then we said maybe you can drop it down an octave. And then we said, go ahead and do octaves here in the left hand. So what if we combined all of those things? Excuse me. See, you get the idea. I actually should probably practice that before I demo it. But that is the culmination of all of those ideas, right? And the rhythms that I'm doing here in the right hand is basically just accenting those swung syncopated upbeats. But it kind of goes back to the Charleston. Keep me honest here on this, Andrew. But the Charleston rhythm is this like just that. Okay, so that's actually really fun to practice, and I would suggest even to myself that I slow things down a little bit as I practice it. Definitely would encourage you guys to do the same, but that is a bit on the 12-bar blues with that Boogie Woogie pattern. So you guys, let me know how you're feeling about that. Let's see here, Michael Stalak. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name wrong, Stalak. Hey Phil, first time watching live, and I'm loving all these extra lessons on top of using playground sessions daily. At work now, but can't wait to practice all this tomorrow. Michael, that is so cool, man. Thank you. Thanks for writing that. It's first of all, awesome job for practicing every day in the app. Second of all, welcome to the community here on these YouTube lives. I want everyone in the chat to say hey to Michael, because a lot of these people in the chat here are active weekly, and it's such a supportive, awesome community. Welcome to the group, Michael. Marnie Millett, what's up, Marnie? Marnie says, I'd like to sign up, and I'm wondering if I'll get the lessons from you like these on Wednesdays or from other instructors. So Marnie, briefly, I'll say that what we do in social media is all kind of bonus outside of the app. Here on YouTube, I tend to be the one kind of going live and posting tutorials. In our Facebook community, we have David Sides, our main teacher, and other team members posting regularly as well as sharing tips, and the community is very active and supportive there as well. Within the app, you're going to see mostly interactive notation with video lessons to walk you through. And yes, you will find me and David Sides, as well as Harry Connick Jr. And more in the app as teachers. As far as the Wednesday night YouTube lives go, well, Wednesday 6 p.m. Eastern, it's just me, and you will see me every week. So if you're digging that, hopefully that's good news for you. Marnie, if you're having fun, every Wednesday 6 p.m. you will see me here, and my team, Aiden and Andrew, helping me put these together. And we'd love to see you again. We'd love to see you again next time. Michael, thanks for being generous there, close enough on the name. Man, sometimes I really butcher these names, so I apologize to you guys. But thanks for joining. I'd love to hear how your session goes later, Michael, after work. Brian Neal, been with Playground Sessions since July 2020. Love it. Keep up the great work. Hey, man. Thank you, Brian. Writing in from Canada. Wait a minute. Canadian living winter in Southern California. Oh, that's better. What's up, Brian? Thanks for joining. All right. So let's see here. For those who are new, I'd like to introduce you to another thing that we like to do on these Wednesdays, and that's called a little thing called Pop Quiz. Now, don't fear here. This is not some real test about your knowledge from the app or anything like that. This is simply a way for you guys to earn some free song credits that you can apply to our interactive app. So Marnie, Michael, those who are new, there's a song library in our app, a song store that you can go and download new songs, and we try to add to those every week. You can apply these song credits to the song store in your app. If you win, I'll let you know. You write an email to info@playgroundsessions.com. No, support@playgroundsessions.com and say, hey, Andrew, I want a free song credit. So I'm going to ask you guys a question, and you're going to write your answers in the chat, and I'm going to pick a couple of correct answers. So here's the question. There's a certain kind of chord that is important for the blues. In fact, it's crucial to the blues. Is it a major chord, a diminished chord, a minor major 7? Is it an altered? What kind of a chord am I talking about here? First 5 correct answers are going to get a free song credit each. I did mention this a bit earlier in today's lesson, and I've definitely mentioned it in the past as well. What kind of chord, what quality chord is crucial and ever present in the blues? And in the meantime, I'm going to practice my own task that I did earlier there. I'm going to slow it down. This is for Andrew here. All right, you guys, the correct answer is a dominant 7th chord. And there's a couple of different ways that we can refer to that chord, a couple of different ways that I will accept as a correct answer. Looking for the first 5 correct. Robert Atkins says 7th chord. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. But it's important to remember that there are different kinds of 7th chords, and you could have a major 7 or a minor 7. So it's important to remember dominant 7th. But you were quick, so I'm giving you credit there. Michael says C major 7th. Michael, I gotta say, same thing that I just said to Robert there. It's important to remember that we're talking about dominant 7ths. Now that can be tricky because a dominant 7th chord technically is a major triad with a flat 7. But it's important that we distinguish between that and a major 7 chord, which is a major triad with a natural 7th. Lily Mae Music says 7th. I'm going to go ahead and say I need a little more specifics there. I gave it to Robert. I think we need to either say dominant 7th or a dominant, as Marnie says. So Marnie, I'm going to go ahead and give you a free song credit. Marnie, I don't think you're an app user yet, but that's okay. We can hold on to it until you are. And if you don't have the app and you'd like to gift your song credit or pay it forward, that's okay too. Let's see here, looking for Dom. So Frank L, Dom 7th, short for dominant 7th, that's correct. Elta John, dominant 7th. Not minor or major, not major 7th, not diminished. I was throwing you guys off with that one. I love books to read, dominant 7th. So I believe that's 5. I'll go over it one more time. So Robert Atkins, first one out of the gate. We're going to then go with Marnie, and then we're going to say Frank L, and we're going to say Elta John, and we're going to say I love books to read. All right. So here's a great question that I'm going to answer from Jennifer, and then I am going to we're going to leave it there, I think, for today. And I'm going to remind you guys to use user voice to help me pick what the next topic is going to be for next week. Yeah, let's have Andrew post that again so you don't have to search through the chat. Go ahead and click the link here, and you can make your voices heard for next week. So Jennifer asks, what makes it a 7th? What is 7? That's really a great question because we're talking about a couple different things here. We're talking about the key of C, right, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're also talking about the 7th of each chord, respectively. So the 7th can mean a couple different things. When we're talking about what key we're in, there are 7 scale degrees in that key. The 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7. And in the key of C, it's the same as the C chord, right? The C chord, you're going to use the same scale degrees that you'd use for the C scale. Now, what gets tricky is when you go to, for example, the 4 chord, the F7 chord. we're still in the key of C, and you know that because I just called it the 4 chord. That's because it's the chord that's built from the 4th scale degree of C, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But here's where it gets tricky. Once we establish that chord, you then have to look at the scale from that chord to determine the chord, the notes that make up that chord. So for example, even though this is the 4th in the key of C, well, on the F chord, it's actually the 1, right? It's the 1 of the F chord. 2, 3, so there's the 3rd of the F chord, the 5 of the F chord, and then this would be the 7th of the F chord, but we're flatting it, right? So that's why we call it the flat 7. We have an F chord. An F major triad is the 1, the 3, and the 5 of F, right? So the 7 of F would be this, but we're flatting it. That, of course, makes it a dominant 7th. So when we talk about 7 chords, 7th chords, typically we're talking about 4-note chords. A triad, which is typically 1, 3, 5, or a variation of that, maybe 1 flat 3, 5. And then we add the 7th scale degree of that scale that the chord is outlining. I know that can be a bit tricky and it's a bit of a mouthful. When we go to the 5 chord, okay, well, what does that mean? The 5 chord in the key of C, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the 5 chord is a chord built from G, so it's a G chord. Now that we've established we're playing a G chord, we have to look at the G scale to figure out the chord tones. The 1 in the key of G, here's 2, the 3 in the key of G, the 5, and then here's where I was trying to explain earlier, here's 6, here's 7 in the key of G. But because we're playing dominant 7th chords, we need to play that as an F natural. We need to flat that 7th. And I hope that answers why you don't see a flat symbol in front of the F here. It's because we're in the key of C. The 5 chord, by nature, is a dominant 7th chord already. We don't have to make an alteration to that note. So that's a bit on that. If you guys want some more on that, I think we can dedicate some more time next week to that because it's a very interesting topic. Elta, you just summarized it really great. A flat is just a half step to the left or half step down, right? Left and down, same thing on the piano. Not necessarily a black key. You got it. I love to see the summary and the learnings here, so great work. Elta says, you need me to help memorize songs so you can impress at Costco. Is there, oh, I see. You're saying you were playing the Costco piano. Oh, I like that. Yeah, what are you going to be playing next time? Maybe you can try to hit him with some Boogie Woogie. Marnie, you are welcome. Thanks for joining. So once again, if you want a free song credit, you're going to email support@playgroundsessions.com, and most likely Andrew is actually going to be the one answering that email, and he's here with us tonight. So all you have to do is say, hey, I want a free song credit from Phil's Blues lesson, and he'll hook you up on your account. You'll go in your account and you'll see an extra free song credit in there. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining. Make sure to hit up user voice so I know what we're going to be talking about next week. I always want to be teaching you what you want to learn. So with that said, I'm going to just play some blues to play us out. And was it Uncle Rabbit that was playing the U bass? Feel free to join along here. Here we go. See you guys next week. Slow things down.